Thomas Paine, the great motivator of the American War of Independence, he said, "A democracy is the vilest form of government there is."
Fear is the path to the dark side.
We want to communicate with our fellow Americans, with our countrymen. We want to communicate this so that they can help us to change this system. One of the major lies that was taught to the American people came about through our government school system. In the government school system, they taught us, as I said before, they taught us about how the government was supposed to function, at least from the government point of view. And one of the things that they taught us was that our form of government is a democracy, where the majority rules. A majority-rule democracy.
This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule.
And we can rarely turn on the television news, but what we see some politician talking about our democracy, and every place we've gone trying to instill a democracy, we end up with chaos. Well, the reason for that is very simple, because a democracy has never worked in all of history. It has been tried, and it has been proven a failure every time that it has been tried, and it is a failure in this country, but they are still teaching the students in our schools, our government schools, that we have a democracy. Now, a democracy is a system that will not work. And I am here to explain to you why it won't work. And the way I do that is this. Most of you have heard the term pecking order. The democracy form of government will have a pecking order. And we must understand that pecking order if we're going to understand how our system was designed to function 200 years ago. The pecking order in a majority-rule democracy is here. You will notice, of course, I have the pecking order over here in a constitutional republic, which is our lawful form of government. The founders of this country, the word democracy was a dirty word in their vocabulary. Thomas Paine, the great motivator of the American War of Independence, he said, "A democracy is the vilest form of government there is." James Madison, who is known as the father of our U.S. Constitution, he said, "A democracy will lead to the loss of property rights. It will lead to chaos." They knew that a democracy would not work, and they tried to warn us about the dangers of a democracy. But here we are, 200 years later, and our government controls the schools, and they're teaching that we have a democracy. Thomas Paine must be spinning in his grave, because we today in this country have a vile form of government. What does that word vile mean? Well, I think the word evil probably is more fitting, and we probably understand that a little better today if we say we have an evil government. Now, the pecking order. Right at the top in the pecking order here in this system, we have Group X. I will explain who Group X is after I go through the rest of the list, because no one has ever told us anything about there being a Group X up there at the very top in our political system. They taught us that the majority controlled the government with their vote on election day. They said that the majority controls the government. The government then, of course, controls the public servants. They create the case and the statute law. The statute law, of course, creates the corporations. And guess who's on the bottom in this democratic system? We, the people, as individuals, are on the bottom. We are powerless today in the system if you are operating under the rules and the teaching that was given to you in the government school. Most Americans find themselves right here on the bottom today. They go to the polls on election day, and they are confronted with a ballot that has two evils. Two evils. You've got two candidates running for the same office, and they're both evil, and you try to figure out which is the lesser of two evils, right? And you walk out of those polls after you have cast your ballot, and you are frustrated, and you feel absolutely powerless. The reason is you're on the bottom. What is knowledge? Knowledge is truth stored in the mind. If you have lies stored in the mind, you don't have any knowledge, do you? These people down here don't have knowledge. They have believed the lie, and they believe that their only power is that one vote on election day. Group X, who are they? Every Monday morning we have 12 bankers that go back to Washington, D.C. These 12 bankers are unelected. They never run for office. You will never see their names on a ballot. You are not going to have any choice as to who they are. They are unknown. And they will remain unknown because they don't want you to know who they are. And they don't want you to understand how much power they have because they control the majority. We go back to 1979, October of 79. Jimmy Carter is towards the end of his 4-year term as President of the United States. He has not announced for re-election. However, everyone in this country knows that he will run for re-election. Ronald Reagan has been running since 1976 for the Republican nomination in 1980. These bankers, this group right here, 12, they have decided that Jimmy Carter is not going to have a second 4-year term in the White House. They have decided that it is going to be Ronald Reagan who will be the next president of the United States. And so they started raising the interest rates in October of 1979. Every time the interest rates went up a point or a half a point, you had another million or so of our countrymen who were out of a job. Steel workers, auto workers, loggers, sawmillers, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, so many of these people were out of work, and we had what they called a recession. And interest rates went all the way up to 20%, and who got blamed for it? Was it Group X that was blamed for all of that? No. Nobody blamed them. They all blamed Jimmy Carter. Let's go over here to the pecking order in this constitutional republic, the form of government that the founders gave us back there with the Constitution for the United States of America. They had that constitutional convention back there in 1787. By 1791, December of 1791, we had the Constitution ratified and we had the Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution had been ratified by the states. We had an independent nation. It was a nation of independent sovereign states. Now, I won't get into that part of it, but here was the pecking order in the system that they gave us at that point in time. They put God, our Creator, at the very top. Go back and read the Declaration of Independence, and they talk about nature's God. Who are they talking about? They're talking about a Creator God. Now, they put the individual next in line. God didn't create this system. It was people. We the people created the system. You'll notice that the Constitution is below we the people. These individuals, that's what we make up as we the people. And they wrote the Constitution. We're not below the Constitution. I don't have any constitutional rights. My rights are inalienable or unalienable, whichever term you want to use, because they came from my Creator. And the founders understood that so very, very well. And so here we are here, And so now we have written a law called the Constitution for the United States of America. Not the Constitution of the United States. It is the Constitution for the United States of America. The United States, the municipal corporation in the District of Columbia, they have their Constitution.
Back in 1868, after the Civil War, a group of men got together and formed a corporation. Well, anybody can form a corporation. Anybody. So this group of guys got together and they formed a corporation in Delaware. It was the Delaware Corporation. And they called the corporation the United States Corporation. And it was stipulated that anybody who would work for that corporation would be referred to as a citizen. So it's a United States Corporation. And if you work for that corporation, you're a citizen. And so there today, when you walk in a bank or anywhere and they ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? You say yes. What you think they're asking you, are you lawfully in America to do business? They didn't ask you if you were lawfully in America. Like an attorney, listen to what they ask you. Because you're in court, be careful what you say before the judge when he says, are you a U.S. citizen? Because if you say yes, what you have said is that, yes, I am voluntarily, of my own volition, admitting that I am an employee of a foreign corporation called United States, which was incorporated as a Roman trust back in 1868, so that the United States is a privately owned company, like Ford Motor Company, General Motors. They're huge, they're big. Well, so is the U.S. government, but it's a privately owned corporation. And therefore, all corporations have to have a president. So we got a president. And corporate law says you have to have a vice president. So they got a vice president. And you also have to have a secretary-treasurer. That's corporate law. So they got a secretary-treasurer. It's a privately owned company, for God's sakes. It's like General Motors, Ford Motor Company, Sears, and the U.S. government. It's all corporate. It's a business.
But the Constitution that is supposed to govern them is this Constitution right here, written by we the people. And that Constitution, of course, created the government, created the public servants. These public servants create the statute law. Case law doesn't fit over here in this system at all. Over here, it's case law that governs this nation today. And the corporation is on the bottom, created by the statute law. Now, if in that government class, when we went to high school, if they had put the contrast, if they had put these two pecking orders up on the blackboard in front of our class and then said, now class, which system do you prefer to live under? Do you want to live over here in this system where you're up here at the top, where you're above the Constitution? Or do you want to be over here in this system where you're on the bottom and there is no Constitution at all here? The Constitution means nothing in this system here. The Congress of the United States, they wrote a law that's called the Anti-Injunction Act that says that if the IRS puts a high assessment against you, you have to pay that money, you have to pay that assessment before you can have access to the courts. Well, the Fifth Amendment says you are guaranteed the right to due process, right? Well, how come they can do that? How come the Supreme Court says it's constitutional? Well, the Supreme Court, they say, we control. We are the ones that tell you what the Constitution means.
The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin, res, meaning thing, and publica, meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it."
The last nail is being driven into the coffin of the American Republic, yet Congress remains in total denial as our liberties are rapidly fading before our eyes. The process is propelled by unwarranted fear and ignorance as to the true meaning of liberty.
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.